Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. Some horrifying updates coming out of Gaza and some new comments from President Trump, as well as Bibi Netanyahu, who is lying about the fact that Palestinians are starving to death. He is denying that. So we'll get into all of that. We also have a weird moment happening culturally that's worth examining, where all of a sudden, a lot of people who either had been silent or had been relentless promoters of the Israeli side suddenly came in with some concerns about the fact that babies are literally starving to death before our eyes, talking about everybody from Barry Weiss to Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton. So wanted to take a look at some of those voices and try to figure out what exactly is going on there. Also have some news out of the podcast world. Apparently, Netanyahu had approached Joe Rogan about going on his podcast, and Rogan had the sense to be like, you know, I think I'm good there. That is according at least to Netanyahu's son.
Yes.
So
his Miami resident son, by the way. Why does he live here? Does anyone want to tell me that? Let's get some deportations going.
Yeah. And we've got a couple other little updates for you from Theo Vaughn and Tim Dillon out of the podcast world, too. We're also continuing to focus on Epstein, because Trump is continuing to focus on Epstein. We have potential for Ghislaine Maxwell pardon, apparently. So we've gone from release the files to release the pedophile groomer like that. And the MAGA is buying it, apparently. Alex Jones is on board. You've got Charlie Kirk. You've got Newsmax, I believe, saying perhaps she's the real victim, Saagar, in all of this. So incredible things happening there. We'll dive into all of that. And at the same time, Democrats are reaching their lowest approval rating on record. So just, just praise and glory spread all around between these two parties.
Yes, there
incredible political system we've got
I don't
here.
even know what to say about that. It is actually kind of fascinating. So if you're an insurgent, it is a good time for you. Thank you to everybody who's been signing up, breakingpoints.com, but don't want to get too much into the spiel. We got some horrifying stuff that we do have to get to.
Yeah, indeed. So as I mentioned, Trump on his trip to Scotland made some comments about what is going on in Gaza, as we've all watched these horrifying images, and the numbers tick up every day of mostly children and babies who are literally being starved to death by the Israeli blockade, of course, supported by the United States of America. But Trump says, actually, we've got it wrong, and we should all be thanking him for the aid that we've sent in. Let's take a listen.
Should Israel be doing more to allow food into Gaza?
It's terrible. You know, you really at least want to have somebody say thank you. No other country gave anything. We gave $60 million 2 weeks ago for food for Gaza. And nobody acknowledged it. Nobody talks about it. And it makes you feel a little bad when you do that and, you have other countries not giving anything. And nobody said, gee, thank you very much. And it would be nice to have at least a thank you. And I took a lot of heat. When I do that, a lot of people aren't happy about that because they say, well, why are we doing it and nobody else? But I think we had a humanitarian reason for doing it. Will I do more aid? Yeah. The U.S. is going to do more aid for Gaza, but we'd like to have other countries participate. We're going to mention that to the European Union today. That's an international problem. It's not a U.S. problem. It's an international problem. And we're giving a lot of money and a lot of food and a lot of everything. If we weren't there, I think people would have starved, frankly. They would have starved. And it's not like they're eating well, but a lot of that food is getting stolen by Hamas. They're stealing the food. They're stealing a lot of things. You ship it in and they steal it.
So that's a lie. In fact, Israeli military officials, we can jump ahead and put this up on the screen. We've got a New York Times article here, A8, that we can put up on the screen. Israeli military officials saying, you know what, actually, there's no evidence that Hamas is routinely stealing UN aid. The international organizations that have been on the ground have long been saying there's no evidence of this whatsoever. So that's number one. That's a lie. Number two, he says, if we weren't there, people would have starved. No, people are starving. People are starving. At least 100 have starved, and the vast majority of those have come in just the past number of days. Overwhelming, somewhere around the 80 count, are babies and children, because, of course, they are the ones who are most vulnerable in this situation. So, no, people are starving. Babies and children are starving right now. And Saagar, he also says that this is not a U.S. problem. This is an international problem. Oh, really? It's not a U.S. problem. Why are we the ones that are supporting this then? Why are we shipping these bombs? Why are we backstopping them diplomatically? Why are we the number one country in the world, both in terms of arms and aid and diplomatic support for Israel? No. This is a U.S. problem. And just like the last guy, if you wanted to stop this, you could stop it today with a phone call.
Yeah, there's two countries that are most responsible for this. One is obviously Israel, who, as we're about to show you, even this decision to has some sort of, quote, humanitarian pause and to reinstitute the aid is causing consternation inside of Israel at the horrific idea that they may actually allow aid to enter the country. And it is primarily, of course, their responsibility. At the end of the day, they have blockaded aid basically from the first day of the war. They stopped and cut off electricity, water, except, what was it, October 17th or something like that? Barely even days into the war. But on Trump himself, there's now a growing idea of like, Israel has to do something differently. You and I were talking about this before. What else could they possibly do at this point? There's like this theory in the United States that Israel, absent the dropping of a literal nuclear weapon, which I guess at this point I wouldn't even put past them, is like, what have they not, it's not like they care about human life in the Gaza Strip. Like if they wanted to fully invade and to go, quote, save all the hostages, they would. It's pretty obvious that they just can't do it. They don't have the military capacity. Second is, this idea that they haven't gone full on enough with bombing. Take a look. Like, it's all on video. Yeah. You could literally take the drone. I was just looking yesterday at this one city of the before and after. It's insane. It's gone. I saw Lindsey Graham on television being like, they're going to do to Gaza what they did to Berlin and Tokyo. It's already over. It's already Tokyo. The firebombing has happened. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? In the starvation and all of that is just a downstream consequence actually of their own policy. And of course, you're right on the humanitarian front from the U.S. perspective. It's not even just the bombs and all of that, because I'm not even necessarily convinced that that would stop everything. It's the entire diplomatic cover of the empire. I mean, even this morning, the ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, is doing the starvestigation is what they're calling it now, being like, actually, this one child featured on the cover of the New York Times had muscular dystrophy, and he didn't. That's part of why he looks so, skeletal. It's like, what are we doing? Whoa, what we're trying to parse like which particular child is like worthy of saying is starving, right? It's like, okay, let's pick the other nine.
Muscular dystrophy, so it's fine if
right,
starves
exactly.
to death. Is that what we're
or it's
doing
like, oh, actually, he's skeletal because he has muscular dystrophy, and that was secondary to. It's like, hold on a second, okay? People who have muscular dystrophy are probably more vulnerable to starvation. Just guess, personally. But secondary, it's like, fine, pick 99 other examples. There were 6 who starved literally yesterday, right? Yeah. So we can go and we can, quote, cherry pick all of those. That's what they're accusing people of. They're basically saying it's like some international press operation to scam people into thinking that people are starving. It's not. It's the reality. And of course, it's the humanitarian situation from the UN. But at the very beginning, we have seen that anytime the president wants to pick up the phone and force Israeli action, they can do it. When they bomb the Catholic Church, Trump calls him up and it's like, hey, apologize now. I need this this needs to be done. Yeah. Hours later, Bibi comes out. So that's part of the problem, is that we've seen time and time again, Biden and Trump, when they want to compel a difference in action, they can, but they don't. And there is something like deeply sick about this, because from the very beginning, and this is where I think all of us need to be honest here about Israeli society, this is popular. Blocking the aid, they don't have a problem with it, by and large. Right. In fact, their most politically activated members of their society are the people who are bringing their kids to stop aid from flowing into Gaza.
That's right.
Some of their most popular politicians are saying that this is a, quote, humanitarian disaster because it's allowing people to eat. And that's who we're dealing with here. Yeah. And I think we should all just ask a pretty fundamental question, absent of what, military action or whatever, and be like, why are we supporting this? That's it. Just why? We can ask morally, you can ask strategically. I would say the strategic has been a disaster. I mean, look at the entire world. Even compare the mealy-mouthed politicians of the European Union, the French, and who are like, we're going to recognize a Palestinian state. Okay, fine. The British Prime Minister in the UK. I literally can't think of a single other NATO nation, G7 economy, that has not put out a statement at least being like, hey, the starvation in Gaza is a disaster and that needs to come to an end. There's only one country that hasn't. It's the United States. So it's pretty clear here, not only a responsibility, but it's really about the cover diplomatically, where, we'll talk soon about this article from Axios, but Bibi has literally openly acknowledged in Israeli cabinet meetings that he understands that Israel only exists because of the United States. Fine, then we should start acting like it. We should act like that to every country, Ukraine and everybody else who is a client state of ours. So we have an obvious massive responsibility for it from the beginning. I mean, it's not just a Trump problem. Obviously, it's a continuation here of the policy.
They are our client state. They are doing all the things that they do, including, bombing Iran and Lebanon and Syria and whatever. They do these things so with no impunity because they know that we will protect them from the consequences. That's how they are able to act in this insane way, in this insanely like brutal and outrageous and rogue way. It's because we backstop all of their actions, including the intentional starvation of this population. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out when you don't allow aid in any significant quantities for months and months, guess what? People are not going to eat. They are going to starve. And they have had an intentional policy also of destroying farms and greenhouses and any ability for Palestinians to be able to create food and grow food for themselves. So it's, a total and complete siege at this point. And with infants, mothers are too malnourished to be able to produce milk. So the infants are reliant on formula, and there's no formula. There's no formula allowed in. So what do you think is going to happen here? Not to mention you have doctors at hospitals who are passing out because they are so weak and malnourished at this point as well. You have the journalists who have been able to be on the ground. They also are being starved to death. And by the way, all this, obviously here on this program, we're long past thinking that they give a shit about the hostages. I'm talking about the Israeli government whatsoever. The hostages are also being starved right now, by the way. So congratulations. But we've long known they don't care about the hostages. They don't care about that at all. That's just been a piece of like propaganda and emotional blackmail for the world and for their own population. We have a new Netanyahu English statement out about how there's no starvation in Gaza, but Israel is going to make sure that they do whatever they can for the Palestinian population. This is A2B. Let's take a listen.
There is no starvation in Gaza, no policy of starvation in Gaza, and I assure you that we have a commitment to achieve our war goals. We'll continue to fight till we achieve the release of our hostages and the destruction of Hamas's military and governing capabilities. They shall be there no more. We shall not have any more of these massacres. We shall not have any more of these monstrosities. We stand for human freedom and human life, and that is not commensurate with Hamas or with Iran, other Iranian proxies. We fought this battle together. We shall win it together.
Imagine being Benjamin Netanyahu and saying you stand for human freedom and human life. Like, what a sick joke. And then just lying there is no starvation in Gaza. I mean, what a bunch of disgusting bullshit. And then just listen to the other members of his own government. So we can put up Ben Gvir here on the screen, who is mad that Netanyahu might let any aid into the Gaza Strip. He says, I think at this stage, the only thing you should be sending to Gaza is shells to bomb, conquer, encourage immigration, that's ethnic cleansing, and win the war. This is not some random, nobody, fringe character. This is an official Israeli government minister, a part of the Netanyahu government. So for Netanyahu to come out and pretend like, we can't hear what they're saying, like we can't hit the translate button on Hebrew and see that there has been an intentional starvation policy. It has been ongoing. It has been accelerated in the past number of months, and that the ultimate goal here is to go along with effectively President Trump, has greenlit this plan to force the population out of the Gaza Strip entirely. So to bomb and kill and murder and massacre even those who are seeking aid, and to create conditions that are so absolutely horrific that you pressure people to flee the Gaza Strip altogether. And, it's, what was it? Witkoff said it's a demolition zone. In him and in Trump's real estate brains, they look at this and they're like, let's just clean out all this rubble. Let's cleanse, quote unquote, the Palestinians out and rebuild from scratch. And that is the plan. It's not that there's no day after plan. I know people have been saying that for a long time. No. That is the plan, and that is the starvation policy is part and parcel of the overall goal of getting rid of everyone out of the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, at this point, I don't think it's even really deniable because we have that reports from Axios that the head of Mossad and others came to the United States and were like, hey, let's everybody think about this. You, the United States of America, need to put diplomatic pressure on every other government in the world so that they will accept Palestinians. So they're like, you need to use your pressure of the empire to facilitate our ethnic cleansing of the entire Gaza Strip. And also, this is why it's just so frustrating, even talking about this here in America, because everybody's hamming and hawing over whether the starvation picture, is real or not, or as to whether starvation itself is there and what the overall end goals of the war are. They say this shit out loud. They have said it from the beginning. They want to get rid of all of them. To the extent that there's any U.S. policy here, it's mostly been to facilitate that and then obfuscate it at a major diplomatic level. And I think, let's put A5, please, up on the screen. There is something, I think, visceral for everybody, anybody who's really watching the conflict right now, who are, quote, they say Trump team rethinks their Gaza strategy after 6 months of failure. But really, I think what it comes down to is that there's probably two sides of this. And based on my own insight, this is what I could say. One is the side that's like, oh man, these people will never stop, because you had Iran. And then even after the solution, they're furious, right? Because they want to keep going.
Right.
You had Syria. They didn't want to stop. We had to call them and we're like, this is over. It's not happening. You'll recall the madman strategy. How many ceasefire negotiations others have we now participated in? Now listen, they come out and they blame Hamas, but yeah, okay. I mean, by the way, Jeremy Scahill over at Dropsite, he has the full document that Hamas presented. Go read it for yourself. Sounds pretty reasonable to me. I'm sure somebody, Zionist or whatever, is going to clip that and all of that. You can literally read the document. It has not been disputed as to what they want.
Sorry, just to pause you real quick. Not to mention, there was a ceasefire agreed to that Israel, with the U.S.'s backing and support, blew up. Because they didn't, remember they were supposed to go to phase 2, and they, from the beginning, were like, we're not going to phase 2, and then they didn't. And the only thing, and remember, we talked about this, the only thing that could have forced them to go to phase 2 was the Trump administration saying, no, you are not going to undermine our ceasefire deal. But they did. And, they broadcast they were going to do that, and then they did it. So there was a ceasefire deal in place that Hamas agreed to, and the Israelis agreed to, and they undermined it and destroyed it.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, I mean, at the end of the day, the Israelis say this. They're like, we cannot agree to this because the Hamas proposal has us withdrawing from Gaza. That is not an acceptable solution. So what does that mean? They have an indefinite presence in Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, probably Iran soon. Let's all look at that. But the thing is that we're also seeing this growing thing from the Trump administration where they seem to believe, like let's put A6 please up on the screen. What they seem to believe is that if they can continue their diplomatic cover around this quote starvation, they can still find a way to militarily deal with this. They have not been able to militarily deal with this for 15 months? It became clear within the first 3 months of the war. What Ahmed Sik, he's a pro-Israeli journalist here, reports, behind Netanyahu's decision over humanitarian aid, the foreign minister and the ambassador in Washington warned of a total diplomatic collapse, even in the United States, if Israel does not demonstrate a change in the situation in Gaza. What I have been able to surmise now so far is that their belief is that if they feed them, in the interim, let's say over the next 2 weeks, and then ramp up the military campaign, that they can, quote, find some sort of solution. There is no military solution now at this point. They have bombed and leveled the entire place. Their troops have occupied, not the entire place, but a big portion of it. If they could get the hostages, they would have done it. Now, they don't care about the hostages, obviously, so we can put that to the side. But even accepting that, within the current framework, there is no military solution. Maybe the United States could do it if we, again, with a tactical nuclear weapon in terms of what their own goals are. I don't even think Israel, like I said, I wouldn't put it past them alone. I don't know if America would necessarily allow that. A ceasefire of some kind really is the only solution. And yet they refuse to do it. They absolutely refuse to not accept the condition of being able to indefinitely occupy and expel as many people as they want. They effectively want a West Bankanization, not even more so in the Gaza Strip. And they're saying all of this stuff out loud. So I really don't know where we go from here. I mean, I guess it's good that we've, there's been some diplomatic break. And I think it is visceral watching people starve because there's no cover here. There's no we were trying to hit Hamas and there was collateral damage, right?
Yeah.
There's no acceptable secondary solution. I think it's, look, it's a good thing, ultimately that they did break in terms of this. But first of all, we've been covering this for 2 years. It's not like this is the first time there's been starvation, aid hold up and all of that. That's been happening basically for the last 15, 16 months. But from this point forward, it's a dark place because this is just a pause. The ceasefire is not happening. America has no energy for a ceasefire. The political organs of Washington, as long as people continue to eat, and what I mean by that is like not have starvation, they're going to continue to back the war. It's going to go on forever. There is no political constituency inside of Israel that actually seeks a ceasefire or a diplomatic solution.
Yeah.
So what's next?
Well, not to mention that, there's claims that, they're going to let more aid in. Believe that when you see it.
Yeah, that's
Believe that when you see it, because it's very likely that so far there are no reports of, increased aid reaching the population on the ground. And they've done these, we can put these, this airdrop image up on the screen. This is A10. They've allowed in some of these airdrops, which is just another, they did this a little bit under the Biden administration. We covered it then. Like, this is just like a PR stunt. And then you can see the absolute chaos. I mean, these people are starving to death. They're desperate. They're trying to get whatever they can to, save themselves and their family. And so, of course, it's just, absolute disaster. There have been injuries with this, and the amount of food that's getting in is absolutely paltry. So thus far, there has not been any significant increase in aid. And you certainly would not put it past them or, the Trump administration running cover for them to do some show of, we're letting the airdrops in and here's a few more trucks, but not really change the situation on the ground. And make no mistake about it, the situation is incredibly dire. The very latest update we have is that there have been 14 more cases of death by starvation over just the last 24 hours. So that's the pace. The pace of starvation death is escalating. That brings to 147 confirmed starvation deaths, most of them, again, occurring over the past several weeks. And that includes 88 kids who have been starved to death. And it takes effort. It takes like a concerted plan, and a famine is not just something that randomly happens, especially not one where the entire 100% of the population in the Gaza Strip is impacted by this. They are in the worst stage of famine at this point, where there will be, even if they did flood the zone with aid at this point, where there will be dire consequences, including continued deaths for some period of time, and there will be irreversible health damage to many of the 2 million roughly people who are in the Gaza Strip because of the level of malnutrition. I mean, kids who are, trying to develop and grow. And I mean, you can't even imagine it. Like, you truly cannot imagine it. And one other thing from that Axios report that we had up before that I just want to really underscore and note for you guys is they report in there that Trump has given Netanyahu a free hand to do whatever he wants. That's exactly what they say, from military operations to hostage negotiation, the distribution of humanitarian aid. While White House officials say Trump is genuinely disturbed by the killing of Palestinians and wants the war to end, he has applied virtually no pressure on Netanyahu to end it in the last few months. In most calls and meetings, Trump told Bibi, quote, "Do what you have to do in Gaza." In some cases, he even encouraged Netanyahu to go harder on Hamas. And there was another clip of Trump from a few days ago where he said Israel needs to finish the job. I mean, that's where he's been. So, I mean, any sort of concern he has, like, who cares whether you're bothered by the images or not, if you're not willing to do anything in order to stop it. And yes, you have plenty of power to stop it. Couple more things here to get to. Let's put A7 up on the screen just to underscore the point Saagar was making about how sick Israeli society is at this point. This is on Israeli channel 14. And this is, this commentator who is mocking a mother whose child died of starvation. And they're saying, oh, well, she looks like this is not a starving woman. No, this woman who may have eaten all of her child's food. I don't know. I can't think of any other option. A woman who ate a whole goat, who ate the girl herself. That's what they're saying about this mom whose 4-year-old daughter died of starvation imposed by Israel. That's what they're saying. And, listen, it's so sick and twisted. You hate to even address it. But guys, guess what? Children are the most vulnerable. Their little bodies are trying to grow. They take more nutrients. They have fewer fat stores to draw on when they're little kids. So of course they're the most vulnerable to starvation. And it's just absolutely sick and twisted, the things that you see coming out of this society, which is in a, by and large, and there are exceptions, but there is a genocidal fervor that has taken hold of this society. They are fully on board by and large on board with blocking aid. They are by and large on board with complete ethnic cleansing. According to the polls, close to a majority of Israeli Jews are on board with an absolute, complete and total genocide of the Palestinian population. So, and those are the voices that are represented and very powerful within this government. So we can't fool ourselves about what is going on within that society. And last one here, let's put A9 up on the screen because this is important too in terms of some of the lies and the fraud that has been spun. So the Israelis have been trying, and their propagandists have been trying to spin this idea that it's the UN's fault that there's well, there's not starvation, but if there is starvation, it's the UN's fault. Bullshit. Look at this. The IDF, according to an Israeli channel, again, Israeli report, they destroyed 1,000 trucks worth of aid and buried that aid rather than provide it to Palestinians. This is our friend Shail Ben Ephraim, who says this occurred 2 months ago, resulting in the current hunger crisis in Gaza. The same source says the IDF is about to destroy more aid. Don't let anyone tell you the hunger is not intentional. This is a deliberate Israeli policy. And in fact, the UN had brought in trucks back, a week or so ago, and that the Palestinians who were desperate swarmed the trucks, and then the IDF shot at both the Palestinians and those aid workers. So if you're the UN, how can you distribute aid? First of all, they're blocking the vast majority of anything coming in, and then they're firing on aid workers. And by the way, if you don't want to have this chaotic situation, and there's no proof whatsoever that Hamas has been stealing the aid as they've been asserting, but if that is truly your concern, the answer to that, Saagar, is actually to have a mass quantity of aid so that food is not so, valuable and so precious, that there's, plenty to go around, so that the Gaza, quote unquote, humanitarian foundation, they tweeted, in Gaza, food is power. Yeah, when you have nothing, then of course, the scarce supply, whoever has that, ends up with a lot of power. So if you're so concerned that, it could be Hamas that benefits, then that is even more of an argument to flood the zone with aid, with food, with water, with fuel, so that people are not starving to death.
Yeah, the World Food Program says they have enough food to feed every person in Gaza for the next 3 months. So,
just let them do it.
Just
That's
let them do it. And the whole point is that, I know this is difficult. The reason why that the UN was not, quote, distributing it is because you said, not only the security situation, but it's because the Israelis and the Americans said there's only one way that you're allowed to do that, and that's with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation.
Yes.
And they're like, well, we're not going to partner with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation because they're openly slaughtering, killing people whenever people come for aid.
Yeah.
You're basically setting up a death trap.
Yeah, over
on
1,000 Palestinians massacred.
Right.
Trying to seek aid.
You've
with
shot and
Gaza
killed.
Humanitarian Foundation.
Yeah, maybe tomorrow we'll talk about that Green Beret, right, who came out. And I mean, it's unbelievable, right? And this is a guy who served in multiple theaters in Iraq and Afghanistan, and is like, I have literally never witnessed this level of carnage, of war crimes by the IDF, and of the gunning down of people who are coming for aid. He said that out loud, right? And so you can see why, as an international aid organization, you would not want to both legitimize and actually partner with said thing, because then your food would basically be used as bait to kill even more people. It's a horrific, horrific situation. As I said, look, I think it's better, obviously, that some of the aid begins to come in, but this is, in my opinion, probably the darkest part of the entire war, because it shows the full force of the propaganda machine in Israel, in America. And also, listen, guys, I mean, I know people think it's a victory. Our ambassador is still denying that there's any starvation. Our government is still allowing all this to happen. The EU and the Brits and all these people, yeah, they'll put out a statement. As long as some of the aid continues to go in, like, this is going to continue now for quite some time. And I don't know, it's not good. No. It's just like, I don't really see at this point any sort of like anything less than total victory for their own diplomatic part. I just saw some reporting from outside of Israel. It's like Bibi wants to take the summer to basically, re-engineer his re-rise to power, beat the court case, and after that, that's when the full-on like expulsion is going to happen. That's their plan.
Yeah, that's their plan. Yeah. And we're helping them to accomplish that horrific goal.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show, ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.